Happy Yu Darvish Day. On the 1-year anniversary of his trade to the San Diego Padres, would you feel better if he were still a member of the Cubs rotation? Locked on Cubs coming at you.
You are Locked On Cubs, your daily Chicago Cubs podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Good morning. Happy Thursday to you and yours. This is Locked On Cubs. I'm your host, Andrew Bellison. Great to have you in with us today. Thank you so much for being with us. Want to thank you for taking the time each and every morning to make us your first listen of the day. It does not go unnoticed. Join us on social media, Twitter mostly, if you will, at Locked On Cubs, at Chicago Cubs PA. Love to interact with you guys on Twitter. Please interact with us. It makes things so much more fun. Again, thank you for taking the time to make us your first listen today and every day. Remember, wherever you download your favorite podcast, you can find us. Locked On Cubs, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. We are free and available. Really, really good show for today as we get set to turn the page from 2021 to 2022. Long list continues of the best Cubs player to wear each uniform number in the history of the organization. We'll continue that count up today. Iowa Cubs nuggets and notes, Yu Darvish anniversary, other nuggets to get to. But first, it's the Cubs mailbag. And this is something that we haven't really done as of yet. And I thought this would be a lot of fun, as a matter of fact, to do. I was really excited about this, to be honest with you. So we opened this up on Twitter. We're going to do this from time to time. This is what I was talking about, that interaction with you guys. I want to pick your brain. I want you to pick mine. We can bounce ideas off each other, respectfully, of course. But this is something that I thought would be a new kind of activity to solicit your questions and your thoughts and your concerns about this Cubs team, anything that might be on your mind. So we sampled a handful of them from Twitter, and we'd like to talk about them here now, if we could. So let's hop right in. First one comes from Joe Campbell. Joe, thank you, first of all. His question is, are they, meaning the Cubs, going to go after any free agent difference makers other than Marcus Stroman? Sorry, Joe, I had to get some Java. Yes, 100%. I believe that they will. First of all, let's break down what we already do know. Carlos Correa, obviously perennial all-star shortstop, had huge linkage to the Cubs pre-lockout. And we've talked about this at length, but it doesn't get old. If you're like me, it's like you can't stop thinking about the possibility of adding a big name, top tier free agent like this. So there was linkage there, and the rumors that linked his camp to the Cubs camp turned out to be more than just rumors, per Bruce Levine. So there was mutual interest on both parties. This is, of course, all pre-lockout. Here's the caveat on this, in what's being said. He is offensively very, very comparable to a Seager-type player who obviously signed with the Rangers for $325 million on a 10-year deal. 10 years. It's a ton of, it's such a long time for a free agent contract. Here's the difference. Correa is a markedly better shortstop defensively, and I don't think there's any argument there. As a matter of fact, there's been talk that towards the end of that Seager deal, middle to end of that Seager deal, he might turn into a corner outfielder or corner infielder, taken away from the shortstop position in Texas. So who knows? So the idea that Correa is going to want a deal much different from the one that Seager got would probably be unfair to say. He's going to want the 10-year deal, $300+ million, you would figure, for the life of that. Now, the Cubs have come out flat out and said, we're very interested, but the 10-year thing, not going to happen, most likely. We'd be in at a 7-year, say. Does Correa go for that? I don't know. That remains to be seen. If he does, and if the Cubs do put their money where their mouth is, which it seems like that's what they want to do, which is awesome when you're talking about a player of this caliber, then yes, Joe, they do go after another free agent difference maker to complement the signings they've already made, including Marcus Stroman. And maybe Carlos Correa is that option. Now, aside from Correa, I've talked about this at length, shoring up the free agent position. Namely, you bring in a pitcher like Stroman, who 57% of his outs a year ago were on the ground, top 10 in all of Major League Baseball in ground ball outs. You have to be strong up the middle. Can't necessarily rely on the health of Madrigal and Horner, although excited to have those pieces going in to this season. So what about Trevor Story as a plan B? And I'm air quoting for those of you not watching us on YouTube. I hate to call it a plan B because he has been a really, really good shortstop the last several years. Now, here's why I'm intrigued by this. And I still consider him a difference maker, even if that's a route you're going to pursue, if the Correa plan just doesn't work out. Last year had a down year to his standards. 251 average, 329 on base, 471 slugging. Still clubbed 24 home runs. I know, played in Coors Field in Denver, thin air. I get it. Knocked in 75 and stole 20 bases. And that slash line and those numbers were significantly down from his overall career average. Because of this, there's a lot of speculation of those in the know will say that he might have to take a shorter deal to kind of prove his bounce back worthiness before he essentially could cash in on a bigger free agent deal moving forward. I love this approach and this option. I think that's super feasible for the Cubs. You bring in a top tier shortstop still, I'll say on the cheap. Maybe a better way to put it would be on a more team-friendly deal of a shorter term for sure, not having to lock someone up for 10 years. Because let's face it, those 8, 9, 10-year deals seldom work on the back end, regardless of options or club options or mutual options or buyouts, et cetera, et cetera. And again, talking about Stroman, the ground balls, shoring up your defense immediately because he is a well above average shortstop. So yes, in short, Joe, I do think they target another big top tier free agent to accompany the moves they already made pre-lockout. Next question comes in from Tim Stavros and asks, should the Cubs stick to the classic rebuild or should they sign some big names now in conjunction with the prospects they have coming up? Tim, it's a great question. Thank you for checking in on Twitter. We appreciate you listening to Locked On Cubs each and every AM. I think they've already answered that question for us, essentially, to a certain extent, because they went out and were active pretty early in free agency with Yan Gomes and Clint Frazier, Michael Hermosillo. Obviously, the Stroman deal was the big splash right before the lockout happened. So I think that they've already answered this and the route that they're going to go, that the total rebuild, in other words, not in the plan and not necessary. The Stroman deal put the stamp, I think, on where Carter Hawkins and Jed Hoyer are trying to pilot this Cubs plane. And on top of it, they're linked to some other major names, such as Carlos Correa, which we have touched on. I'm also very on board with this approach overall as a baseball fan and a Cubs fan. Major market teams like the Chicago Cubs, in my opinion, should never really have to go through a total rebuild. And I'll air quote that again. The funds are available. The market is there. Look at the Yankees, for instance. They seemingly are competitive every year for the last X amount of years. I'm not saying that you need to spend frivolously like they do at times on the market or whatnot. But a total teardown, I think, in a market like Chicago should be avoided. Now, with that said, when you are between regimes of Jim Hendry as general manager in the front office, with the Ricketts coming in, all new ownership, all new baseball operations department, transitioning to Theo Epstein, Jed Hoyer. I guess it made more sense. There was just so much broken that needed to be fixed. They went with a total teardown, and you can't argue with that because they obviously won a World Series. But to do it again as a charter franchise with deep pockets is not a good look, not necessary. And I think they've already dictated that's not the route that they're going to go, which I love. So more to come post lockout, I am sure. Want to talk about a couple more of your questions here when we return. This is Locked On Cubs. I'm Andrew Bellison at Chicago Cubs PA, at Locked On Cubs on Twitter. Before we get to those other great questions that you sent in, fun story about Mark Grace and Rick Sutcliffe that I want to touch on here. Those two in the same story, always going to be trouble, right? It's the new year. So that means new resolutions. And if yours is about getting fit, eating healthier, make sure you include Built Bar in your plan. Built Bar is a protein bar. It tastes like a candy bar, but it's even better because it's low in fat, low in calories, low in sugar, super high in protein. It makes it easier to stick to your resolution because it tastes so darn good. You want to eat healthy, but it just gets boring. Same old thing over and over again. Supplement your diet with a Built Bar. Most bars are just 130 calories, 4 grams of sugar, 4 grams of net carbs, and 17 grams of protein. You really can't lose. Do me a favor. Go to Built.com. That's our website. Use promo code LOCKED15. You're going to get 15% off your order on Built.com, LOCKED15. Try it today. I think you'll like it. Mark Grace, Rick Sutcliffe coming up now. Cubs fans, baseball fans, welcome back. Locked On Cubs, rolling at you. Happy Thursday to you. Get with us on social media at Chicago Cubs PA, at Locked On Cubs. Want to thank you sincerely, real quick here, for making us your first listen each and every morning. Whether you're going to school, you're headed to work, you're on the train, you're off this week for the holidays in 2022. We thank you for tuning in. Find us free and available wherever you find your favorite podcast. I have to thank you especially again. Locked On Cubs, 37th ranked baseball podcast on Apple in the entire United States of America. I cannot tell you what that means to me, and it's all because of you. So honest to goodness, thank you so much for being along with us. You are what makes this show. I'm just happy to be along for the ride, and I truly mean that. Had another great question on Twitter, Cubs mailbag, that I want to dig into. This is from Tex Critter, and Tex asks, favorite Mark Grace story / highlight. So loaded question here, Tex. You're talking about my favorite first baseman of all time, greatest hitter of the 90s, sweet lefty swing. I've said it before. I'll say it again. I was a first base kid growing up in the Chicago suburbs in the early 90s, man, left-hander. I thought I was Mark Grace. I didn't hit like him, but I thought I did. I heard this story personally as well from a sit-down interview I did with Rick Sutcliffe, and he got a good chuckle out of it. He's the butt of the joke here. So if he said it and laughed, I know it's appropriate for me to share with you guys. But Grace tells the story as well because he was there playing first base this particular day. This was a game in Cincinnati, and in Cincinnati at the time, they used to fire off fireworks after Reds players hit home runs. So according to Grace, and Rick said this too, Sutcliffe was very intense on the days he pitched. So Eric Davis took him deep, and then Paul O'Neill takes him deep right after that. So back-to-back home runs for the Reds against Sutcliffe and the Cubs. So Sutcliffe's pretty not happy. He's PO'd to say the least. Pitching coach for the Cubs at the time, Billy Connors, comes out of the mound, and Sutcliffe had, as he put it, some very choice words for Billy to please retreat back towards the dugout. I don't think that's exactly how he put it, but you could just imagine what Big Rick Sutcliffe was yelling at him on the mound that day. Anyway, long story short, according to Rick and Mark, so this story has been verified by both these parties. Billy looks at Sutcliffe and said, Rick, I know you have everything under control. I'm just out here to give the fireworks guy time to reload. How classic is that, man? That's as good as it gets, courtesy of Rick Sutcliffe and Mark Grace. I love that story. Tex Critter, thank you for asking about a favorite Mark Grace story, and thanks for tuning in to Locked On Cubs as well. I'm Andrew Bellison. This is Locked On Cubs, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. We've been going through a great list. We're counting from 0 up of the greatest player to wear each Cubs uniform number in the entire history of the organization, and I want to continue that list here today. We left off with number 40, Rick Sutcliffe. Today, we turn the page to another right-handed starting pitcher, number 41, John Lackey. Ended his career with the Cubs in 2016 and 2017, picking up his third World Series ring in the process, integral part of that championship club. How about number 42, since retired for the great Jackie Robinson? Bruce Sutter wore it proudly. Hall of Fame reliever and ace. Won the NL Cy Young in 1979, made 4 All-Star teams as the Cubs closer. Bill Swish Nicholson, do you remember that name? Number 43, decade as a slugging outfielder for the Cubs in the 40s. Also worn by Dennis Eckersley. Eckersley obviously had more success elsewhere, not here in Chicago. Number 44, tough call. Phil Cavarretta, 1945 National League MVP award winner, or Anthony Rizzo. Anthony's a franchise icon. A. Rizzo, 44 World Series champion, the best to ever wear number 44 for the Chicago Cubs. Number 45, remember this name? Paul Ossenmacher, 5 years in the Cubs bullpen as an innings-eating lefty. Topped 100 innings out of that bullpen twice. That's insane. Number 46 goes back to Cooperstown, the great Lee Smith, Hall of Fame, Cubs all-time saves king, 180 of his 478 career saves coming with the Cubs. Another closer for number 47, the greatest player to ever wear 47 in Cubs history, one of my favorite Cubs of all time, shooter, Rod Beck. Big body, big personality, the memorable giant stash. 51 games saved for that 98 wildcard team. He always made it interesting, but he always seemed to wiggle his way out of trouble somehow. How about Rick Rushell, the best number 48 to ever wear a Cubs uniform? 135 games won in 12 years with the Cubs. He was an all-star. He was a Cy Young Award contender in 77. The great Andy Pafko of the 30s and 40s also wore this number, but Rick Rushell gets our nod for greatest number 48 in Cubs history. Jake Arrieta could not be left off the list. Number 49, historic NL Cy Young award-winning season in 2015. Obviously a world champion in 2016 as well. Les Lancaster at number 50, spent parts of 5 years with the Cubs, highlighted by a 1.36 ERA in 42 games for Don Zimmer in 1989. How about number 51? Augie Gowan wore number 7 longer, but was number 51 from 1935 to 1936. He scored 133 runs in 1935. It was an all-star the following season. Probably forgot about that name. Justin Grimm, number 52, right-hander out of the pen. Spent 5 seasons in that Cubs bullpen, believe it or not. 1.99 ERA in 2015. World Series winner in 2016. Big part of those championship years for the Cubs. Going back a little bit again, the best number 53 to ever wear a Cubs uniform, Johnny Schmitz, all-star in 46 and 48. Lefty spent parts of 8 years on the Cubs staff. We'll keep it in the pitching category for number 54, Aroldis Chapman. Blockbuster trade 2016, put the Cubs over the edge. He was a huge difference maker in their World Series run. Great, great stuff there. We'll pick up this list. We're about halfway home with more Cubs, the best to ever wear those jersey numbers as we roll on later next week. Have some Cubs news, notes, and nuggets, as well as the Iowa Cubs and the Yu Darvish anniversary I want to touch on here momentarily. Before we do, want to remind you, BetOnline has you covered this holiday season with more props, odds, and lines than ever before as football rolls into college bowl season and the NFL marches towards the playoffs. BetOnline remains your number one spot for all the sports action all season long. Do me a favor. Take advantage of this great offer. Head to their new mobile or desktop website and you can receive a 50% welcome bonus on your first deposit. That's right, 50% match on your first deposit. Just use promo code LOCKEDON. Bet online. It's the fastest and easiest way to bet all of your favorite sports, so don't wait. Take advantage of the amazing offers available today. Bet online, where the game starts. Yu Darvish anniversary talk right after this. Welcome back, Locked on Cubs. I'm your host, Andrew Bellison. Thank you so much for being with us here today as we get set to turn the page, rolling from 2021 to 2022. Have some news, notes, nuggets as we wrap up here 2021. First of all, happy Yu Darvish Day to you. This day last year, Yu was dealt to the Padres for 4 minor leaguers and Zach Davies. Let me preface this by saying that I'm a huge Yu Darvish fan. I like the person. I like the pitcher. That 2020 season he had here on the north side was sensational. I mean, he was as good as he was in his entire career, really. Really good social media follow as well. I don't know if you follow him on Twitter or not. My question for you is this. Would the Cubs be better off today if Yu Darvish was still a member of that rotation? I mean, Stroh, Yu, Hendricks, Wade Miley. It's pretty sexy when you put it like that. Now, last year in San Diego, Yu took a step back. Fastball velocity was down a little bit. Had some injuries as well. The numbers definitely regressed slightly. I'll say this, better or not, I don't know. You don't have that big contract looming anymore. The Cubs, or as a Cubs fan watching from afar, best of luck to you because I am a big fan of his. So best of luck in San Diego. Whether or not he was still here, I don't know. Depends how you look at it, I guess. I'd love to know how you feel if the Cubs would be in better shape with him still part of this rotation. This might be the feel-good story of 2021, and this is a perfect way to end the program here today. As you may or may not know, we addressed it on a show earlier in the week or last week. The Iowa Cubs recently sold to Endeavor Sports Group. The Gardner family, who held the team for 20 plus years, upon closing the deal, did you hear what they did? I mean, this is so cool. Michael Gardner shared profits of the sale of the team with all 23 staff members. How cool is that? From janitors to VPs, it was based on numbers of years worked. The total amount given out, excuse me, was $600,000. The most tenured staff member received $70,000. Wow. Honestly, classy as it gets. Feel-good story of 2021. Former Cubs, iCubs owner sharing profits of the sale with every single employee that they had there in the front office. That is just sensational. Well done. Hats off to you. They do things right in Iowa, no question about it. Cubs fans, Locked on Cubs fans, thank you for an amazing run here in the month of December to close 2021. Cannot wait to carry on Locked on Cubs with you in 2022. Big interview next week. Had a change of schedule. Mark Silverman, Sylvie from the Waddle and Sylvie Show will join us next week to dissect Cubs 2022. Happy New Year. Be safe. Be healthy. We will talk to you down the road. This has been Locked on Cubs, part of the Locked on Podcast Network. See you guys.